Thanks a lot, Anne. Now let's take another look at the NBS report detailing bribery practices here in Nigeria. Well, I'm now being joined on the news at 10 by the chairman of the Nigerian Economic Summit Group, Mr. Kyari Buka. Thank you so much for joining us on the news at 10 tonight.
Thank you, Idrima.
Now, this is the first time the NBS is carrying out this sort of report. What do you make of it? What did you think when you saw it?
It's interesting in that, one, I think a survey of this sort is needed in this country for quite a while. And I think the fact that it is now being done in conjunction with the United Nations Office of Drug and Crime is significant. Two, the most important thing about studies or surveys of this kind is the trend. So we need to wait for probably a few years to see what the trend is, because survey being a perception made by people, and of course I would imagine that they have done some statistical sampling and methodology that are sound, but it reveals quite interesting things. Of course, there are some things that generally Nigerians have been cynical about, and they can tell you which uniforms usually break the tape, if you will, about corruption. And I think those numbers and those agencies came out in the top of the line. And obviously, when we're talking about corruption, it's not only the public service, but the private sector need to be looked at. However, the preponderance of things is that the public service is entrusted with the public goodwill or the public commonwealth, and therefore more scrutiny needs to be there. And clearly the results have shown. One is the fact that the estimation of the amount was over 400 billion naira. To give you an example, the capital budget for this year is 2.2 trillion naira, which means that 400 billion is close to 20% or nearly 20% of the capital budget of the country. I have seen some other remarks about it being close to 40% of the education budget for federal and state. There are also some interesting lights, if you will, or positives, if you will, about reporting of cases of bribery. The only problem is that only a small percentage, only 4%, ever reported to an official authority. But when you report to official authority, it appears that majority of people do not get negative consequences, even though people perceive that if I report, I will be victimized. But majority of the people that have reported were not negatively impacted. I think it is about only 9% that were negatively impacted after reporting a case of bribery. So there is a tiny flicker of light when you look at the overall data. It's 167 pages. I actually went through it fairly quickly.
Okay,
therefore, there are a lot of things from it.
Yes, I'm just trying to draw your attention to some of the agencies there that top the list. You were talking about it a bit earlier, looking at the percentage distribution of bribes being paid. The police there, topping the list. And then surprisingly, you see the judiciary being second, the last hope of the common man. So what do you think that tells for us in terms of the rule of law and respect for the judiciary? Isn't it worrying for you?
It is, because it is, those two institutions are the institutions that we must put our trust and faith in, and they are coming out ahead in terms of the corruption perception, and therefore it really says a lot about those two institutions, and they actually are neck to neck, meaning that I believe in the judiciary is like a fraction of a percentage below the Nigerian police force. And the judiciary here was talking about both the prosecutors and the judges. So when it says judiciary, it's not just judges per se. It's even on the side of a person or an entity that you thought would actually fight for you. There might be some elements of malfeasance there. And of course, the list also goes from there downwards into immigrations and the driving or licensing agencies and so on and so forth. Yeah, it is something that we have assumed and we've been cynically talking about, and this is actually proof that we need to pay attention. And the most effective thing that needs to be done is in those two key sections of the public service.
Thank you so much, Chairman of the Nigerian Economic Summit Group, Mr. Kyari Buka, for joining us in the news at 10 tonight.